makes teaching more difficult. I read this statement in a few different articles, but definitely by Parsons and Deschamps. There is a little bit difference between age gap in teachers, though. Younger, inexperienced teachers hold a higher hope for students with inclusion and mainstream students than the older, experienced teachers. Now, why do we think this is? At this point, I would prompt the class to try to give me answers why they think the difference is. The main reason I can see between the two, which I have not been able to find actual data to match it, is that older teachers have been taught a certain pedagogy and they are used to that pedagogy. We're changing it by adding in these mainstream students. Whereas younger, inexperienced teachers they don't have an established teaching style yet. There are, however, two important accommodations that affect the perceptions of the teacher, rather being an older teacher, or a younger teacher. The first one are the physical adaptations in the classroom. Does the classroom have enough lighting for the student with the special needs? Is the noise level okay? Is the seating okay? Are all these arrangements made prior to that mainstream student arriving to the classroom? The physical adaptations need to be made for these mainstream students, but are not always done so. So it makes it harder for the teacher to reach that student, because if the seating arrangement is set where he can talk to his neighbor and has a disorder where he's hyperactive possibly, maybe he will not be paying attention as much. The other one, which are huge, are educational adaptations. And these are different teaching methods for those with special needs. As I read through the literature, I read that a lot of teachers are not responsible for a lot of courses on how to teach special education, students with special needs. In fact, if we go through our own program, we're only responsible for one course about how to teach students with special needs. So, are we as effective as a teacher to teach students with special needs? I may not know the exact, correct, appropriate way to reach every student. And that is a main problem that I came across through my literature. It also affects the confidence of the teacher. If the teacher doesn't feel that he or she has enough experience or has the know-how to reach the mainstream student, then his confidence or her confidence level is not as high, and so he or she may not reach out to that student as much. So in that case scenario, the mainstream student is actually at a disadvantage because he's not getting the needs that he needs. I found this graph and I found it quite interesting. It talks about the teacher ages from the 1986 to 2011. As we can see, the teachers are becoming a little bit younger as the years go by. How is this going to teach perception, do you think? I would talk about I would ask the class at this point what their perception would be. Hopefully they would draw the conclusion that younger, inexperienced teachers hold higher hopes for mainstream students because they haven't been in the classroom yet. But then I would present them with the contrary data that I found. What I found was that as soon as teachers finish their student teaching, their hopes for inclusion and mainstreaming falls greatly. So, for some reason, that perception is falling, and we somehow have to overcome that. We have to figure out how to better the teachers who are in the school district about inclusion with more education, and keep up education for those young, inexperienced teachers. So lastly, we're going to talk about fairness in grading. So there are a couple different ways about grading. Most of us, we use the standard point grading scale, where you assign an assignment, it's worth this many points. A student completes it, you grade it, they get 19 out of 20. They get 0 out of 20 if they don't do the grade, if they haven't finished it. But there's other adaptation grading scales. And these are a little bit more based for those mainstream students, for those students with special needs, by building portfolios, doing summative assignments, pass-fail grades, different types of grading scales for them instead of putting them on that point scale. Well, which do you think is best to choose? Do you think the standard traditional grading system is best? Or should we use this new adaptation grading, where we are focusing on learning rather than we're focusing on the actual outcome? There was an interesting study that I came across. His name was Erickson. He talked about a process called transformative grading, which focused on learning, not behavior, meaningful feedback, and highly qualified summative assessments. I thought this was kind of interesting because instead of focusing on that ultimate final grade, he was looking through what the students actually were learning. However, overall, teachers' beliefs about grading was that it was unfair to the general population if they did any adaptation grading, if they graded pass-fail for students who were mainstreamed, if they gave them portfolios versus the point scale. They felt that this was an unfair approach. So my solution to Leigh Scott case, well, there's a few things I would have done differently, and there's a few things we do not know about the case. First off, in her syllabus, we are not sure if she has participant points available for a grade. In my case scenario, I have learned that effort is just as important as that final grade. So I can't say this word today. So effort in the syllabus, I would put effort in the syllabus that I could show that Aaron to justify why Dale had gotten a higher grade. He would have participation points. Secondly, I think it's more importantly to take away from the actual grade difference and ask Aaron, what happened? Why did he receive a D for this semester? Was there something going on in his life? Was there something he needs from me that I am not teaching him? I think it's important to note that just because Aaron might not have an IEP associated with him does not mean that he's not a student with special needs. They may not have been identified yet. So possibly we have overlooked his needs and just let him slip and get through class with getting a D, just passing the course. So I think it's most important to reach out to the student and so that they all can learn. And lastly, my 3 practical suggestions. Again, keep an open dialogue with students. Ask each of your students where they're at with their learning process and ask them what they're struggling with. For me, I think it's important to be there before school and after school and at lunch to help students with different things that they're struggling with and help them succeed and get that better grade. Second, establish a grading method that you think is fair. Do you think participation points need to be included in the grading scale? Do you think effort is something that's not supposed to be in there? That is something you need to establish in the beginning so you do not end up in a Leigh Scott situation. Third, beware of your own biases. Furthermore, challenge yourself to see past those and accept each student as an individual. Each student is learning at a different process. No one is going to be on the same level. No one is going to learn the same exact content at the same exact time. So we have to learn that each student is a different person and we have to approach them in a different manner. And lastly, the train leaves Boston at 9:27. No, I'm kidding. Just kidding. Does anyone have any questions?